This is Garis, Masculist, MGTOW flyers, that is 2-3 page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 635, entitled A Masculist's Duty to Harangue Monoconscious Feminazi Bigots, that's MFBs. Description. This flyer explains why masculists have a moral duty to harangue MFBs, that's Monoconscious Feminazi Bigots, for the sake of the improvement of the lives of three major groups, namely men, women, and society as a whole. The flyer itself in two parts. A masculist's duty to harangue monoconscious feminazi bigots, that's MFBs, by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. This flyer claims that once a man has been masculisted, that is, he has had his masculist consciousness raised, that is, he has learned how women oppress men, and in fact, worse than vice versa, by absorbing masculist ideas, then he has a strong moral duty to use that by consciousness, in brackets, that is, he has had both his feminist and his masculist knowledge raised, learning that gender oppression is very much a two-way street, close brackets, to harangue MFBs, Monoconscious Feminazi Bigots, for the sake of the benefit of three large social groups, that is, men, women, and society as a whole. This flyer deals with each of these three in turn. Why should masculists harangue MFBs for the sake of men? Masculists claim that women oppress men far worse than vice versa, because many of women's gender crimes against men are truly horrible, lasting decades, which makes the ways that men oppress women, that is, that the monoconscious feminists keep harping on, seem small beer in comparison. To masculists, even rape, which is one of the worst ways that men oppress women, is seen as small beer compared to the horrible, decades-lasting ways that women oppress men, the worst three being women's manslavery, women's divorce rape, and women's forced fathering. The masculist case against these three horrible gender crimes that women commit against men is very strong, which explains why there are so many female masculists now, who have already absorbed masculist ideas and see their logic, thus changing their gender political attitudes towards men, seeing that there are definitely two gender political stories, one for women and one for men, that is, feminism and masculism, respectively. In today's feminist-dominated gender political era, men really suffer, since one father in four gets butchered in the fluffy feminist-dominated divorce court system, which is a massive gender crime, as seen through the eyes of the masculists, so serious that it is a war issue to masculists, who have two main enemies, the fluffies and the fluffy feminists. A fluffy, based on the word fluff, is a masculist label for a traditional woman who expects to be able to leech off the money and labour of a man for decades of his life, thus manslaving him, and for one father in four, divorce raping him in the hated, by the masculists, fluffy feminist-controlled divorce court system. A fluffy feminist is a monoconscious feminist who still has fluffy expectations towards men, seeing men as cash machines who exist on this earth to pay for women to have babies. Masculists claim that it was men who enabled women to be careerists by giving women male-invented science-based medicine, the pill, household gadgets, and higher education, so that women now have a life expectancy of 85 years and a career window of half a century, so have a powerful moral duty to get off their fat parasitic asses and flip up that is, become FIPs, equals financially independent persons, by bothering to get career competent educations at high school and college that will make them FIPs as adults and not expect, fluffy style, to parasite off the labour and money of a man for decades of his life, thus manslaving him and often divorce raping him, making the gender criminal woman who does this the hated enemy of the masculists, who have such a hatred of such gender criminal women that masculists effectively aim to exterminate them as the gender political enemy by totally ignoring them, not even pumping and dumping them, forcing them to rot on the shelf, dying a slow, miserable death, manless, loveless, sexless, childless, lonely, miserable, and for 40% of middle-aged women who live like this on antidepressant drugs, living with their cats. Masculists are abolitionists who see man's slavery as literally 1,000 times bigger problem than was Negro slavery, given the numbers. There were several million Negro slaves in the US slave period, and there are several billion man slaves today on the planet who need to be liberated by forcing women to fib up and pull their weight financially, not expecting to leech off the labour and money of a man for decades of his life. To abolitionist masculists, manslavery is the worst of all gender crimes and a war issue. The masculists aim to wipe out fluffies and fluffy feminists by haranguing them to death, by forcing them to rot on the shelf, dying a slow, miserable death, so that their manslaving, divorce-raping genes are removed from the gene pool. The core idea of the masculists is that masculism is essentially a rebellion against being manslaves to women, with masculists putting enormous moral pressure on women, particularly young women, to fib up, to grow up, to take responsibility for their own lives and not expect to parasite off the very life of a male. Masculists truly hate fluffies and fluffy feminists and harangue them with a passion, blasting them with strong male verbal venom and hatred, haranguing them out of the room. Masculists are men, so have 20 times the testosterone levels in their blood than women have. So now that they are intellectually armed with masculist ideas, masculist rhetoric, they have the intellectual tools, the gender political religion, not only to hit back at the deep misandry of monoconscious feminism, but to crush it with very strong masculist arguments that put tremendous moral pressure on fluffies to fib up, or effectively be wiped off the face of the earth by truly angry, hateful masculists who force such women to rot on the shelf. MFBs are monoconscious, that is, brackets, have only had their feminist consciousness raised. Feminazi bigots. Nearly all feminists at the time of writing, that's September 2023, are monoconscious. So not surprisingly are angry at men, because that is what feminism is teaching them. Feminism is a deeply misandrist, gynocentric ideology that teaches women and society that gender oppression is a one-way street, that men are the oppressors and women are the oppressed. So of course, millions of women become angry at men for the ways that feminism teaches women how men oppress women, how men oppress women. Thanks to feminism's strong gynocentrism, feminism says nothing about how women oppress men. So feminists grow up thinking that gender oppression is very much a one-way street, so feel justified at being feminazi bitchy towards men, since they see men as oppressors from whom women are to be liberated. This is the end of part 1.